There was a lot that I really loved about Weapons. This will have spoilers in it. Yeah, I'm not going to try to avoid spoilers because it would be hard. So for those of you who don't know, haven't seen the movie, aren't going to watch it, or maybe you just want a refresher, Paul is a cop. And we first get introduced to him through a female character's perspective. And it's really interesting to me when you see him. Her name's Justine. When you see Paul from Justine's perspective, he comes off so like comforting, like that kind of rock of a personality. Like you get the sense that she knew he was someone who could comfort her, and that's why she reached out to him. But eventually you get to see things more from his side, and you realize that like he's so far from that. He's a mess. He's emotionally super immature. He doesn't have a good handle on his emotions, and he feels completely out of control of his life because he's being, emasculated basically by his wife and his wife's father, who is also his boss, and he's unhappy in his day-to-day life, and he's recovering from alcoholism, so he's really not in a great place. But I love how even though I don't like him so much as a character, there's just still so much to like about his story and the storytelling that the movie did. For example, one of the things I love that the movie did is, so Paul cheats on his wife with Justine, and when his wife finds out, she just completely blames Justine, like comes and like assaults Justine and is like saying that she dragged him into this, blah blah blah, did all of that. And it's like just such a subtle way of tying back into him not being in control of his life. Like even his wife, when he straight up wrongs her, treats him more like a child who is not in control of himself and puts the blame on Justine, because of course he can't be to blame. He's just an addict who needs to be railroaded and taken care of, who's kind of worthless. And like it was just such a clear way of like kind of putting you in his headspace, right? And starting to understand like why he's making the decisions that he's making. So even though I really disliked him in the movie, like I still can't help but enjoy his character for what it was because of things like that. Another really good example of like a piece of storytelling that I really love with his story, even though I don't like the cheating aspect of it, you see the cheating scene from Justine's perspective and you see it from Paul's perspective. And when you see it from Justine's perspective, they don't actually show them having sex. And then when you see it from Paul's perspective, you do see the sex. And then you see everything kind of leading up to it for both of them. And I think that was such nice storytelling as far as establishing like what they were looking for, because Justine is in a point of her life where she feels very vulnerable, she feels very fragile, she's being threatened, she doesn't feel safe in her home, she's looking for something familiar and comfortable, she's looking for exactly that comfort of being with someone who's seen the worst of you, because they're both recovering alcoholics, so they don't say it explicitly, but it's pretty clear that they probably met in Alcoholics Anonymous or some sort of similar thing and have struggled with alcoholism together. So she wants that comfort of being with someone who's seen the worst of her and still likes her. And so from her perspective, the important moments of that night are those conversations and then like waking up and having playful banter and jokes with him in the morning, right? Whereas for Paul, he's feeling emasculated and out of control, and what he's looking for is like something to make him feel like, I don't know a better way to say it, but something to make him feel more like he has control. And I think for him, and more masculine, and like he's not railroaded, or he can choose and make decisions and do things. So I think for him the sex itself was so much more important, because that itself brought him more comfort, and was kind of what he was looking for out of the interaction. And all of this gets said without being said, which I think Kreger is so good at that. Because those are just two examples, and if I really start going off, I saw so many examples of this. For example, one of the main characters, the kid, Alex, He ends up outsmarting the monster at the end, right? And I feel like a lot of other movies would have been super heavy-handed with this, where they were like showing Alex like figuring out how she does her magic and like slowly putting the pieces together and maybe even like planning and practicing and da-da-da-da-da. But instead, Cregger does something what I find much more enjoyable, which is he just showed you Alex being smart and observant. You see in the scenes throughout the movie that he's a quiet kid, that he's a smart kid, he's laid back, and he's the type to watch and observe instead of speak. We know that he's not super talkative or outgoing, right? So then when he has this like triumphant moment at the end of the movie, it hasn't been spoon-fed to you. It hasn't been handed to you. It's just that you're like, yeah, he's been watching. He's a smart kid. He bided his time and he watched, and now he's got the upper hand. It's just nice. It's just it's refreshing. It's refreshing to see that, to see a director not think that I'm an idiot. It's nice to watch a movie and be like, wow, the director trusted in me as the audience to pick up on subtext, right? Instead of shoving it down my throat like I'm an idiot. Another, I think, really nice point of storytelling, I tweeted about the Marcus and his husband, but I'll talk about it briefly again, was like one of the characters, his husband ends up like letting the monster into their house, and it's like a very suspicious, like she's being weird. And it's one of those moments where you could easily think in a different horror movie, like, why did they do that? That's so stupid. Like, why did they do that? But even though Marcus's husband, I don't even know his name, he's such a minor character, like he's not a big character in this movie, and even so, the few scenes that you do see him do so much to establish his character as a homemaker and a caretaker, the type of person who's gonna take your jacket off your shoulders the second you walk into the door and make sure that you're completely cozy and comfortable in their home and everything's clean and exactly in its space. Like, it does such a good job of establishing that when she comes to the doorstep and is like, can I please get some water? And Marcus is like, I don't know about that. And then his husband steps in and is like, no, of course you can come in and get some water. Instead of thinking, wow, he's an idiot and that's a dumb decision, why did he do that? I'm like, oh dang, I get it. I understand. There's another really great moment, or well, kind of a few, with the character Justine too. She does a lot of things that feel very reckless that I think very easily in a different context could be like, girl, you are so dumb. Why are you doing this? But you never feel that way during Weapons because she's such a well-written and realized character. You know people like Justine, like you know these people that when she does kind of reckless things, it doesn't feel out of place. Like I understand it. Like I get it. And I even to the point where I expect it. Like I start to get to know her and I expect her to push boundaries and make situations worse for herself, because not because she's just an idiot and it's a means to an end for a horror movie, but because it makes sense for her character, which I thought was really nice. Justine is insufferable, but in the most, this is someone I know and dislike way, and not this character is written poorly way. But that's how I feel like all the characters were. Like I really felt like I knew people like every single one of these characters, and all of them were kind of insufferable in their own ways. You know, like the drug addict, right? I've unfortunately gotten that call before. Wow. You know, from someone in my life that I loved and cared about but was going through it. I've been on the other end of that phone hearing things like, well, I'll pay you back, and no, I got a job, definitely got a job. I just need you, you know, to drive me to this place or that place, cause and then I'm gonna start, you know. I think a lot of people have. And, you know, you have those Justines in your life who are so prone to getting into this victim mentality and then systematically making every possible mistake that they could to make their life harder, like at the behest of everybody who loves and cares about them. Or, you know, that tough guy, masculine figure who then goes through tragedy and cannot handle it because he has never been in a situation before in his life where he's really had to tackle emotions in a vulnerable way. And so the only way he knows to respond to it is by being aggressive and an insane person. Like, I know that man. I've seen that man in my life go through tragedy before. You know what I mean? Like, all the characters were like that. That's why it was just really, really good. And I feel like that's really where the bulk of the story is. Because the thing that I love the most about Weapons, like coming right out of it, was my realization that as we're going into the crazy last third act of the movie, and this is a monster movie. You might be surprised to hear me say that after all the stuff I'm talking about. You're like, how is this even a horror movie? This is a monster movie, okay? And as we're rushing towards the end, and all of the characters and all of their perspectives, they're all getting closer and closer, and they're about to all collide with each other. What I was the most worried about was not the monster. I was worried about the monster, but I was also super worried, like, what is this addict gonna do? He's high out of his mind, and he's desperate, and he's dangerous, and what is this cop gonna do? Because he's been pushed to his absolute edge, and he's nervous, and he's being really reckless, and every decision that he's made recently has just gotten worse and worse and worse, and like, how far is he gonna take it? What kind of mistakes is he gonna make? And then you've got the same, I mean, all of them are just, you completely lose faith in the characters themselves. Not because they're bad people, like not because they're evil or horrible people, but just because they're flawed and they're all struggling. You lose faith in their ability to protect themselves and each other. That like, in that final stretch going towards the end, I was so tense, not because of what I thought the witch might do to them, but because of what I thought they might do to each other. And I think that that's kind of the point of the movie, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of different interpretations of the movie, which I think are all interesting and really fun. But before I like read any of that and got like tainted by it, my interpretation of the movie was that it was a story about grief, and a story about how when we're dealing with grief, we want someone to blame, or we want something to comfort us, or we want something to do to occupy ourselves, and we can end up like basically weaponizing each other, the people in our lives, and our own emotions against ourselves, right? I just wonder who the kid narrating it is, since it was Alex. So the kid narrating it, we actually probably know who that is. So it is credited as Maddie, I believe. They credited as Maddie, the character Maddie is narrating. And then when you see a close-up of the poster that has all the kids on it, there is a kid named Madeline. So I think it makes the most sense that the girl who's talking at the beginning and the end is probably Madeline. She was one of the kids, and it kind of ties it together because the last thing that she says when the movie ends is like, and this year, some of the kids even started talking again. Like, wink, wink, like she is a kid finally able to talk about it. Like she's talking now. At least that's how I interpreted it. But yeah, that was my interpretation before I read other things and what other people were saying about the movie. I think the grief, I think you can't get around that. No matter how you want to interpret the movie, the grief thing is more heavy-handed. I think it's very obvious that it's saying something about grief, right? But it wasn't until afterwards that I read that it actually is very specifically supposed to be like the different stages of grief, and each character is kind of embodying like a different emotional response to grief. But then I've also seen interpretations like going into all of their vices and what their vices could represent, some of which are really obvious, like drugs or alcohol. But then like I didn't even notice any of this, but people were like pointing out how Marcus as a character might represent like just consumerism in general, because he's constantly eating food. All like a bunch of his scenes revolve around food. He wears a Walt Disney t-shirt. Like, come on. I think they're onto something. The like lunch platter that him and his husband are gonna eat is like egregious, like just way too much food, which I know is kind of a joke reference to his past friend Trevor, but also it's like it's not just the hot dogs, right? It's also cookies and potato chips and ranch dip, you know? My biggest gripe was for all the quality. There were too many plot lines going to focus on. Could drop the cop and druggie and shifted the scares from them somewhere else. I disagree. I disagree. I personally never felt like I couldn't keep up with what was going on in the plot. And I think that the druggie and the cop are really important to the story, I would say. I don't think that you could drop them. Especially when we're thinking about like the vices and how much this has to say about like alcoholism and addiction. Like having the druggie who is only invested in the money. He's the only character that we're following, right? That doesn't actually care about those kids that went missing. Even the cop, he, as awful of a guy that he is, at the end of the day, he's got a moral compass. He cares about those kids. Like, he wants to find those kids. Like, he has a moment where I worried for him. I really didn't know what direction it was going because it's already been established that he's very afraid of getting a bloodborne pathogen, right? And he's been stabbed with a needle and completely did not handle it well at all. So near the end of the movie, he gets stabbed with 3 needles, and I really thought, oh, it's over. Like, he's just gonna lose his mind. And I think he would have lost his mind, but in that exact same moment, he finds out there's a lead to the kids. And you see it flip. You see the panic flip because his priorities is save the children over don't get AIDS, right? Like, so even at the end of the day, like, I think he was kind of a piece of crap person, right? But he wasn't an evil, horrible person. He still prioritized the children, right? But then, but what I'm saying is then you have the drug addict who really didn't. He was kind of an outsider. You know, he was asking for bus tickets to get out of town. He was kind of an outsider to this situation and just kind of got pulled into it, and he only was interested in the kids because he could get money out of it. And I think that kind of represents like the very deepest part of addiction, where you've lost connection to everything, you know, like that's the lowest part of it, right? Where you've cut ties with your family, you don't really have friends, you don't even care about the people around you, not even children who've been missing, right? Because your priority is drugs. Your priority is money for drugs to get high. It's like the deepest, lowest part of that. And I think it's important to have that element in a story about characters struggling with addiction. Paul was a man trying to do the right thing, who knew was the right thing to do in this situation but who let stress control him. I really think his problem is that he was just emotionally immature. He was emotionally immature, which is annoying, you know? I think that's why I dislike him. Like, he gets on my nerves because, as I'm sure you guys have also experienced in your life, dealing with someone like that is annoying. It's annoying to deal with someone like that. But I understand it, you know? And I think he was well written. And like I said, I don't think he was like horrible person, like evil. He was just hard to watch. Oh, another moment that I noticed I thought was so nice, because I think the movie kind of went above and beyond to make sure that the characters never teetered too good or too bad. Like, they do something that you kind of liked, and then they do something that you didn't. And one moment that I thought was a really genius example of this was Justine. It comes up at some point that Justine has been under some scrutiny before any of this happened, before the kids went missing, because as a teacher, she'd done a few things that were kind of like against the rules. And one of those things we find out is that she offered a ride home to a child whose like parent forgot to pick them up. And she's like, well, they lived near me and they needed a ride, so like I took them home. And then Marcus, the principal, is like, that's inappropriate, like you shouldn't do that. And at the beginning of the movie, it's kind of building suspicion, like what really was going on with her, and is she involved, blah blah blah. And then later in the movie, you see the kid, like much later, you see the kid Alex, his parents don't come to pick him up, and he's just standing there. And you know as a viewer, he doesn't know yet, but you know as a viewer that things have gone down at his house. What he's about to come home to is not going to be good. You feel for him, and you see him standing there alone, and you just want someone to save him. And then what happens? A teacher comes up and is like, "Do you need a ride home?" And it instantly gives you that opposite side, that this is like, she just wanted to help a kid who didn't have a way home. You know what I mean? Like, what she did, like, could be seen as really inappropriate and nefarious, and then it could also be so innocent like that. Like, it's just, things can be ambiguous, you know? Is it wrong to offer a student a ride home if you're legitimately just gonna take them home when they've been abandoned by their parents, you know? Anyways, there's so much more I could say. I just thought it was a really nice movie. I really liked it. And I also liked that at the end of the day, it's a monster movie. Sign me up, okay? I like that you could, like, I'm talking about all of this, and maybe you're listening and you're like, I don't care. Like, I just want to, like, turn off my brain and be entertained. You can do that. You can do that. Like, you can literally just go and watch the movie and have a good time. You don't have to think about any of this to enjoy the movie. It is a wild ride. The acting is really good. The story is very well paced. It's got a nice cathartic ending. Like, you can just go and watch it and have a good time. What do you think about there being a prequel to it? I hate this idea. I know the director's all into it. I hate it. No sequels, no prequels, let it die. Just let it be a great thing that happened, and then don't ruin it. That's how I feel. I don't think I need any more context on Gladys. I don't want a prequel for Gladys. I would rather a sequel than a prequel, because I don't care. I don't want to know. I'm very, very happy with the information that I currently have on Gladys, and I think it's fine. No more. The name of the movie is Weapons. Definitely watching this now. You really have a talent with analyzing and talking about stories between this one and One Piece and making them sound cool, because it is cool. It's not me. It's not me. It's the movie. The movie is speaking for itself, right? Oh my gosh. Wait, I have to talk about another thing that I noticed I just thought was so brilliant. Oh my god. So the character of Archer. So Archer is the father of one of the kids that, this will be the last thing I say, I promise. Is the father of one of the kids that goes missing. And there is so much, like, I just loved everything that they did with him. First of all, his name is Archer. And his thing, he's like, angry. I read stuff that he's like supposed to represent like the anger that you can feel in grief. And you can tell that he used to be military. You know, he drives a big truck, he's a big guy, and he is not handling his son's disappearance very well at all. And you get so much story building from things that are never explicitly said. For example, like seeing that he wears military tags, right? So you know that he's a military man, but they never address this. You see the big truck that he drives. You see that his wife is disgruntled with him. She only has like one line in the movie, and it's enough. You see the scene open up on him, and he's sleeping in his son's bed, and his wife peeks in the door, and it's just like, "I'm going to work now," and leaves. Like, that was it. That was all you needed to see, to understand where he was at in his marriage and how he was coping with this grief, which was not well at all. But then also another element to this is you get this really great scene where he has a videotape from his like doorbell, like Ring doorbell of his son leaving that night. And one other family also had a Ring doorbell. So he goes to that family and asks if he can see the footage. And the mom says that she's not comfortable with it. So then he stakes out the house and waits for the dad to show up. And then he goes and confronts the dad and asks the dad if he can see it. And I loved this scene so much because the dad drives up and he's in a Prius And he looks all fancy. He's like in this business suit. And then you have Archer come out and he's dressed much more like casual, coming out of his truck. And he just comes in with this like fierce, determined, like I feel like masculine front. And you could just see the guilt on this other's dad's face. Like you could just tell in that moment that that dad felt like less of a man. Because here's a man who's not letting his son disappearance go, right? Here's a man who's doing the quote unquote manly thing. And then you've got him just zipping on back from work in his business tie and his Prius, and he immediately folds and lets him see the video. And you just see the wife in the background looking so annoyed and upset because he gave in right away and let them see the doorbell, right? But the other layer of this that I loved is that Archer, when this happens and you see Archer do this, you're actually glad as a viewer that he got to see the footage, because you know that him seeing the footage is going to lead him to an answer, and you want him to find his kid, right? So you're not necessarily mad that he bullied him. And this comes right after a scene earlier where he's taking things too far and he's blaming Justine, and he tags Justine's car with the word witch. He like paints the word witch on it, right? So it's like whiplash, because I have this scene where I watch him go too far. He's being too aggressive. He's not letting things go. He's getting people riled up. He's antagonizing someone that he doesn't really know is guilty, right? So he's pushing too hard, and you're frustrated with him and a little scared of him. And then immediately after that, you see him push too hard to find this footage. But in this case, I'm like, okay, I'm glad he pushed hard. Like, I wish he didn't push hard in this other situation, but like in this situation, I'm glad that he did. And it just goes to show, like, how can you know? Like, how can you know? Like, things are just ambiguous, man. I liked it. All of this is to say that I enjoyed the movie, but I actually haven't. Okay, wait, hold on. I started talking about Archer. I didn't even talk about the thing that I really wanted to talk about. The other subtle storytelling element here is that you see flashbacks of Archer's son interacting with Alex as classmates. And Archer's son is that stereotypical like bully kid, and he bullies Alex. And then also when Justine witnesses him bullying Alex in class and disciplines him for it, he has like a little blow up about it. And it just so instantly informs you about the way that he was being raised. Like you get it. You understand why that kid was the way he was with Archer. And you immediately understand that like Archer was not in tune with his feelings. And that's why his son is acting out in that way as well. This like performative, not performative, but like this like the tough guy act, right? Because he's probably not sitting down and having emotional, vulnerable conversations with his son. He's putting up this front, and that's what his son is seeing, and how his son wants to replicate it, right? That's like, and again, all of this is just subtext that you just pick up from watching the movie. And then of course there is a scene where he has like a nightmare, and you get to see that vulnerability in full display as he realizes how much he wishes that he had been more vulnerable and spoken more honestly about how much he loved his son now that his son is gone. Anyways. I really liked the movie. Sorry, I feel like maybe I shouldn't have talked about it because I don't have organized thoughts yet. Like, this is just me spitballing as I think about the movie. I just saw it last night, so I don't have like super organized thoughts about it. But anyways, I just thought it was brilliant. It was very fun. It was very tense. I would say it's more thriller, suspense, mystery than straight up horror, though there are some really well constructed horror scenes in it, and some good scares that were very fun. But overall vibe, I would say, leans more like thriller than horror. Acting was good, story was good, characters were great. I liked it. If I've convinced you to watch the film and you like it, let me know.